Hello, everyone. It is your favorite sports crew together once again. Tim, your screen went black as soon as I started doing the intro.
I guess that kind of sums up how my favorite teams did in the postseason, right, Mikey?
Oof. Well, so here's the deal. You better get started now. 2 times so far. If Tim cuts out or his video freezes, drink. The rambling drinking game is going to be alive and well. I mean, some of you 3. Here we go. If I were actually involved in editing this video, I'd put a little counter in the top where Tim freezes 4, 5, whatever. I finally fixed the bottom where we have our social media at the bottom. You can follow me on Twitter if you want, but I just don't check Twitter anymore. More on that later. But yeah, Tim, your team. It's been a rough football postseason for you, hasn't it? Tim froze. Of course, Tim froze. Of course he did. That's how his teams performed too. They just kind of froze.
Yeah, they did. They froze right in the Mikey.
So you want to elaborate on that a little bit, or are you gonna cut out? You were doing fine before we were recording. Maybe it's my recording software messes up your internet.
Of course, it's only when we actually start filming.
Yeah, but at least we can hear you. You might not be moving, but we can hear you. So continue, Tim. Okay. Well,
I mean, it's a lot of factors, Mikey.
There are a lot of factors. So one of the first things we're going to talk about, we actually wrote down an agenda for today, which means we're going to completely ignore the agenda. College football. So we're done with bowl season. We're done with college football for the lovely 2018 season. And overall, you know what? Bowl season sucked. A lot of games were blowouts. I didn't find myself being very entertained. Whenever I missed bowl games, I check the score and see it was like not going to be like, meh. Oh well, too bad. Guess I didn't need to watch that game anyway. How did you enjoy bowl season overall? What was your final analysis of all of the glorious postseason games between Sunbelt and Coosa and all of those types of teams, lower level Power Fives, the usual?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with you, Mikey. There were a lot of blowouts, and this always seems to be the issue when it comes to bowl season is motivation. How motivated are guys to actually be there, especially teams that just missed out on getting into the playoff or this or that. It seems like that they don't always bring their A game necessarily. So that's always seems to be an issue in bowl season. But yeah, it just really felt like this year we had a lot more blowouts than in years past. A lot of rather non-interesting games. And so I mean, it kind of speaks to a bigger level on how the system could be broken. And I think something might need to be done to figure out a better postseason format in college football. Because right now it seems like the system is getting worse and worse as the years go on. And yeah, we did some of the New Year's Six games were close in the end, but most of them started out as blowouts, and then they resulted in a team coming back in the fourth quarter only to fall a touchdown short. So it definitely was apparent who the better team was in each of those games. But yeah, I mean, there definitely is an issue with the bowl system in that there definitely aren't as many teams that are willing to get up for these games. They might be going to a location that they don't want to go to. Maybe they thought they were going to go to Orlando, and instead they end up in like Boise, Idaho. So that's certainly an issue too. But yeah, definitely a lot of non-interesting games. Some of the New Year's Six games were close, but they didn't start off that way. So, I mean, kind of a mixed bag of results, but in the end, rather disappointing.
I would definitely agree with you. I mean, even if you look at the playoff games, which we'll talk more in depth about later on the show, I mean, the playoff games weren't even close together, like on their own. The only kind of close and entertaining games I can think off the top of my head were Baylor and Vanderbilt. That was a close
Mm-hmm.
one. The LSU UCF game was close, relatively speaking. Texas Georgia became close at the end. Ohio State Washington became close at the end. The Alamo Bowl between Wazoo and Iowa State was a good game.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really think of that many more. I mean, I'm sure maybe some of the other ones, like I think the Outback Bowl and the Citrus Bowl ended up being decent games, but those were at the same time as New Year's Six and playoff games, so I didn't exactly watch those. I was busy watching other games. So, overall, I agree with you. Bowl season was a little disappointing. I feel like just the world owes me better football in December, but I don't know. Of course, some bowl games did have to stand out. General, what was your favorite bowl game of bowl season and why?
So usually, since I'm, born and raised here in Big Ten country, the Rose Bowl always has a special place in my heart. Always love tuning in on New Year's Day, as we zoom in on Pasadena and see the colliding colors there at the Rose Bowl, and that beautiful Bermuda grass field. It's always such a great scene on New Year's Day. But the game itself this year, like we were talking about, really wasn't very interesting until Washington made a comeback there in the fourth quarter to make things interesting. But I guess I guess in terms of a game, in terms of purely which game was the most enjoyable to watch, I think I might have to go the Alamo Bowl in terms of Iowa State and Wazoo. That was a back and forth game all night long. Really came down to the last possession for the Cougars to pull off the win. And the Alamo Bowl always is such a fun shootout. It's usually a Big 12 versus Pac-12 matchup, so it's going to be a lot of offense, a lot of points putting up on the board. So in terms of purely the game, how entertaining the game itself was, I'd probably say the Alamo Bowl, just because of the back and forth nature of that game. But yeah, outside of that, Penn State, Kentucky got really exciting down the stretch in the Citrus Bowl as well. And we talked about LSU UCF, which got really entertaining there in the fourth quarter. But yeah, so I'd say go Tigers. Or this game is one team with all. Go Tigers.
Go Tiger. Oh no. Do we lose him? Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Help me, General. Help me, General Zidane. You're my only hope. Uh-oh. Well, while we lost Tim, I'm gonna completely agree with him. The Alamo Bowl, I thought, was the best bowl game overall because it was the closest and it was entertaining and everything. I really liked the Sugar Bowl, mainly because Georgia lost and the way they lost, that was entertaining. The championship was entertaining just to watch Alabama get slaughtered. But, I mean, those games that I just mentioned, and LSU UCF was entertaining too. But probably the most entertaining of those other three I mentioned. But the reason those games were entertaining was because of the outcome. And so, I mean, I didn't necessarily have a horse in the race of the Wazoo Iowa State game, the Alamo Bowl. But so I have to agree with the General here. That was my favorite bowl game, probably the best game of bowl season. And quite frankly, if you're buying stock in bowl games, hype versus or prestige versus quality of game, yeah, Alamo Bowl is always a diamond in the rough type of game. I remember a few years back when both these programs were playing at a really high level. There was a great one between Oregon and TCU, and we got kind of the same thing here between Wazoo and Iowa State, two programs that are both kind of trying to be near the top of the ladder, and had quite a thoroughly entertaining football game, I would say so. The General's gone. Well, he's not gone. He just froze. Maybe Chicago got nuked and I'm just going to feel terrible. That would be unfortunate. I would totally never upload this. But we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to try and get Tim back, and then we'll be right back. You won't notice a thing, so we're just going to keep rolling. So, 1 second. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the General's back. I have explained to him that I am in complete agreement with him that the Alamo Bowl was my favorite bowl of bowl season. Of course, excluding the LSU game because I was, quite thrilled that a hometown family favorite team won their bowl game. Irrespective of the outcome, yeah, that was my favorite bowl. So, of course, the big shebang here was the playoff. General, how did you enjoy? I mean, enjoy is a loose term. What did you think about the first two playoff games? You can start with the Oklahoma-Alabama game if it's easier for us, because I know what my reaction to the Notre Dame Clemson playoff game would definitely get this channel would get this whole operation just kicked off of YouTube.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start with the Orange Bowl, Alabama and Oklahoma. I legitimately thought after that first quarter that Bama was going to hang 50 at least on Oklahoma when they got off to that 28-0 lead, and I thought, oh God, like this is going downhill fast. And I was like sitting here, I'm talking with my brothers, and I'm like, man, they gave, they should have given Kyler Murray the Heisman because, now it just angered Alabama and Tua, and they're just going off now because this is their chance to prove that that the voters are wrong and this and that. And, and Alabama, God, this team is unbeatable. Who can possibly match up with them, blah, blah, blah. And somehow,
Narrator,
Oklahoma,
it was Clemson. Clemson matched up with Alabama.
At least in this game, Kyler Murray and Oklahoma found a way to fight back in it. And they got within 10 points a couple of times there in the second half to make things really interesting. But again, bottom line was that Oklahoma just could not get a stop on defense. And that's the biggest knock I've had against them all year is that they can score 50, but they might give up 50. And ultimately, that's what cost them here in this game. And I think if Lincoln Riley is truly going to take that next step into the elite level at Oklahoma, he's got to find some sort of defense that can at least hold teams under 30, 25 points. Because if you're giving up 40 points a game, then that's just not sustainable long term, especially when you run into an SEC team like Alabama that has a phenomenal defense, and if they stop your offense even 3 times, you're in trouble. So that's the problem for Oklahoma. They've got to find something on that side of the ball. Otherwise, Lincoln Riley's just going to be a really good coach, but he's not going to be an elite coach. And so, and we saw that this year, and we saw it last year too in the Rose Bowl against Georgia. So that's the biggest problem for Oklahoma is that they don't find some sort of defensive playmakers on that side of the ball. I just don't see them ever getting to the mountaintop at this point. But Alabama was able to find a way in that game, and I don't think we need to say a whole lot about the other games.
Well, the other game, we can talk about the other game in a little bit more. The other game on its own could be analyzed, but I feel like both playoff games you do need to analyze in the grand picture of the entire playoff. So I'll agree with you. I mean, the Oklahoma stuff is spot on. I mean, their Achilles heel was their defense, and that's what came back to bite them. I mean, they started off slow and just could never catch up. And, I mean, Alabama definitely stepped off the gas. I mean, they ended the game kneeling on first and goal or something like that. So Alabama, even though Oklahoma covered, that's mainly a factor of how much Alabama was favored by and the fact that Alabama kind of took the foot off the gas a little bit. Yeah, and I mean, Oklahoma, definitely Lincoln Riley needs to get it together because 2 reasons. I mean, one, Oklahoma has, this is the 3rd straight year where they made the playoff and lost in the first round. I mean, even with the Rose Bowl game last year, which, they probably, had they had a defense, maybe could have held on one and made it to the championship. But it almost feels like Oklahoma's stuck in this limbo where they can win the Big 12, make the playoff, but once they get there, they got nothing for you. So, but So they need to get that defense together, not only to, stop to kind of break the cycle once they get to the playoff, but also to continue making the playoff, because I don't know how much you're paying attention, General, but the Big 12 across the board is getting better. I mean, you have Texas is back, patent pending. West Virginia had a pretty good year. Oklahoma State had some great games, even though they ended up 6-6. Oklahoma State, even having a bad year, was still pretty competitive. Iowa State's getting better, especially as long as they can keep Matt Campbell. And the only school in the Big 12 who's next year is going to be coached by a national championship winning coach, the Kansas Jayhawks. Let's go. Yeah. So, Oklahoma needs to get something together. And honestly, I think you can kind of say the same thing about Notre Dame. What ended up this is I tell people around here who didn't necessarily watch the game or didn't pay as much attention and know every minute detail. Notre Dame Clemson was competitive. Then Julian Love got hurt and his backup got torched. And then Clemson took a couple touchdown lead and never looked back. Notre Dame kind of threw in the towel a lot earlier than I wish they would have, but I mean, that's what happened. That's what blew open the game, so to speak, and it just kind of rattled the Irish, and kind of gave up. So it's a talent deficiency, and especially on the defensive side of the ball. Look at the LSU game. LSU was probably starting band directors in the secondary with a number of injuries and ejections. And, it was...
Trombone players were coming in at strong safety, Mikey.
Oh, some dude jumped out the Mike the Tiger, mascot suit, put on a jersey and a helmet, and played cornerback against the number 3 UCF wide receiver. Joking aside, though, Notre Dame, I think the way the year went showed Notre Dame has as good of a starting 22 as pretty much any other team in the country. But what separates the men from the boys is not your first stringers, it's your second and it's your third string. It's not granted, on some positions Notre Dame had depth. We had a lot of wide receiver depth, we had a lot of defensive line depth, we had quarterback depth. We switched quarterbacks in the middle of the season and turned out great for us. Same thing kind of happened with Alabama and with Clemson, but you got to have that depth across the board. It's getting better, but it needs to get better faster because it's an arms race, and you don't want to be falling behind to Clemson, which honestly, if you look at the playoff as a whole and the national championship game, Clemson is winning the recruiting arms race. I think that case is closed right now. Did you watch the national championship game? Clemson, for the first time since Nick Saban took over at Alabama, Clemson had the better players top to bottom and played like it. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, well, just to kind of circle back to the Notre Dame Clemson game, is you mentioned the 2 turning points in that game. You mentioned one of them was the Julian Love injury, and the other was the fumble on the kickoff that Notre Dame had recovered, and then upon review, the tip of the ball was somehow on the line. Oh, we got a demonstration coming up.
I'm getting a prop. Okay.
He's getting a prop forward, so hang on a sec. We got to demonstrate in case you did not see this on national television.
No, keep talking. Well, first of all, I didn't hear anything you just said, but I have a football here. Okay. Notice the football, its shape, right? It's interesting. Okay. So, what can I get? Let me get
Get a piece of paper or something.
Here, a Tabasco bottle. So, no, that's a horrible prop. My phone. My phone can do. So let's just say my phone. So we have this little magnet here on the back of my phone. Let's say my phone is the field and the magnet is the out of bounds line. The ball was like this. Notice the tip was over the edge, but not touching the edge, right? So say if a football is like this, so say my pointer finger is out of bounds line, this football is not out of bounds. It may be the tip is not the boundary line does not act like the goal line. If this is the goal line, this is a touchdown. But if the ball is sitting on the ground like this, it is not out of bounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and with that honestly, that pylon cam, my like $20 webcam from Best Buy that's like a bajillion years old has better resolution than the pylon cam. Like, and I didn't hear what you said while I was running around my room looking for this little squishy foam Notre Dame football.
I was just telling people that you're going to find a prop in case you didn't see it on national television.
Yep, but basically that was my analysis. That was my internal justification for how that replay review was wrong. And I mean, Brian Kelly was yelling about it, and the announcers, Sean McDonough, who's I could do better, but Sean McDonough was calling that game, and he said you can read Brian Kelly's lips. Like, I get the call, but the buzzwords that we've been hearing ever since they instituted replay review, incontrovertible, indisputable video evidence. The call in the field was a fumble recovered by Notre Dame. The call in the field was that the ball stayed in bounds. Unless you could definitively show that the ball was out of bounds, which in my heavily biased opinion, you could not. You can't overturn it. And honestly, if you go back and watch the replay, I mean, the ball was like this. How can you tell if it's like this or like this? I mean, I can tell because I'm a genius, but there's so many damn pixels. Like, it's such a bad video quality from the pylon cam. Like, and that's what it comes down to. Like, how many times do I can think of one time that might make both our fan bases go up in arms. But how many times is there a goal line play and there's just a scrum at the goal line and you can't tell if the ball is in or out? And if they call it a touchdown, they can review it as much as they want. They can't tell where the damn ball is or when he's down. Or if they call it not a touchdown, like say you are kicking a field goal to go into halftime, but you fake it and try and run it in the Music City Bowl in 2014, and they call it no touchdown. You can't see it. So if you can't see it either way, you have to stick with the call on the field. And from what I could tell, the ball was like this. But regardless, you could not tell whether the ball was actually touching some of the boundary line. For those of you who are keeping score, this was the same officiating crew from the LSU Texas A&M game, and that plethora although maybe correct, controversial, and almost over-officiated, over-replayed end of game. So I agree with you. The Julian Love injury, I mean, we're talking about the replay because the replay was a turning point. Had we gotten the ball on the three, and we made it a 10-3 Irish ball game, maybe the game played differently. Who knows?
It's a completely different game. It's a completely different game, and then if Julian Love doesn't get hurt, Clemson probably doesn't score those 2 late touchdowns in the first half.
Mm-hmm. Which, credit to Clemson, credit's due. That bobble catch before halftime was, if nothing else, extremely lucky. And I mean, you have to be.
That's just a play. That's just a play where you just kind of have to tip your cap and say, you know what, not much you can do there.
Mm-hmm. But and the reason I focus on the Julian Love injury more than the replay is, whenever you complain about officiating or replays not going your way, people just kind of roll their eyes and say, "Suck it up."
Mm-hmm.
We can't control the replay booth. We can control or Brian Kelly theoretically can control whether Julian Love's backup is as competent and as capable as he is. So, you can't make a player anything they're not, but that's what you're supposed to do on National Signing Day, right? That's what you're supposed to cover on NSD. So, that's what it comes down to. And as we saw in the national championship game, Clemson was just a juggernaut that could not be stopped. Wouldn't you agree, Tim?
Mikey, I will tell you what. As angry as I was after that, after the Cotton Bowl, as I'm watching the national championship game about a week later, as the game progressively went on, I'm like, you know what? I feel a lot better about Notre Dame losing to Clemson now. As the game went on, I'm like, I feel better and better.
Mm-hmm.
I could not say the same. In the second half of the Cotton Bowl. Those who were watching it with me can vouch for that.
No, some people were fearing for their lives at our beach house where I was watching the game. But Humble brag that my parents have a beach house. Anyways, Tim has been there. It's great.
30A.
Watercolor and Seaside and all that, where I got this wonderful LSU T-shirt.
I have a T-shirt. Where is it?
Oh,
it's right over here.
Since we're fetching props, Tim has a Seaside T-shirt as well. 30A, please sponsor Sports Ramblings.
Can you see it? There it is.
We can see it very clearly, Tim. Thank you. So, I mean, for a couple years now, since about, for almost 10 years, I've been thinking, you know what? It'd be great if Notre Dame played as well as Alabama. Well, against Clemson, Notre Dame and Alabama put forth about the same effort. It's not the way I wanted things to go down, not the way I wanted to achieve goal. But I mean, I have no other way to say it other than Clemson made Alabama and Notre Dame look like the same caliber of team. I don't know if that's in credit of Notre Dame, an indictment of Alabama, or just Clemson is just unstoppable, just a titanic force of college football right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do know that even despite how bad it looked in the Cotton Bowl, I remember even Dabo Swinney said after the game, Notre Dame is the best team he's played all year.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't know if he was going to say the same thing after playing Alabama, but like I said, watching the game on Monday night, I was like, you know what? I think Dabo knew what he was talking about. That, and again, you talk about, a couple breaks go Notre Dame's way, and who knows how the rest of that game turns out. But it is what it is. But, I mean, I think definitely watching the title game and watch how Clemson just completely outclassed Alabama in that game made me realize, you know what? I think Dabo knew what he was talking about when he said Notre Dame's a pretty darn good football team.
Yeah, I think the takeaway is that Dabo was being genuine there, as Dabo is a very genuine person. I mean, he kind of pisses me off. Whenever you thank God after beating Our Lady's University, and I'm a little salty, I'm going to be a little mad at you. A little Bible Belt preachy for me, but you know what? I'd rather him be a man of God than no man of God at all. So that I'm not going to get upset about that now. But anyways, if you want to just kind of look at the Alabama versus Clemson just as a head-to-head type deal, and I've heard it put this way a couple times, and I think it nails it spot on. You just look at player interviews after each team has won their respective championships and all that. Alabama is a factory, and Clemson is a family. I don't know what Dabo does there at Clemson, but his assistants don't leave, his players go there, and all his players love each other, and they're all incredibly successful. I mean, you saw Deshaun Watson as an honorary captain, and I mean, there were probably players on that team that he had no idea, never played with before, but I mean, they all acted like they were best friends, and honestly, that kind of team cohesion shows itself on the football field sometimes. Whereas Alabama, they just are almost robotic.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think I heard Joel Klatt of Fox Sports put it this way: Clemson is like a family, whereas Alabama is more of a factory. Players go to Alabama and they're trying to get the hell out of Tuscaloosa as fast as they can. They want to go there for their 3 years, look amazing on the football field, get the attention of all the NFL scouts, and then be a first or second round draft pick and make millions of dollars at the highest level. Whereas Clemson, the players genuinely love playing there. I mean, a lot of these guys stay all 4 years. I mean, you look at the defensive line this year. All 4 of those guys could have gone to the NFL draft last year. Wilkins, Farrell, Austin Bryant, Dexter Lawrence, they all could have gone to the NFL draft last year. But they all made the decision that they wanted to come back this year and finish unfinished business and win another national championship. I highly doubt you would ever see something like that happen at Alabama because, like I said, it seems like the players, they want to get there and get out as fast as possible, whereas at Clemson, it just seems like it's a group that loves college football at its core,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Alabama, it's more like a minor league. You know how minor league baseball players, they toil around in like these podunk towns and cities across America, riding buses all over the place, and they're just like, you know what, I'm putting in my time here, grinding away, hoping to get to the show one day. I feel like that's kind of the feeling at Alabama of, you know what, I grind away here under Nick Saban. Yeah, he's kind of an asshole, but you know what, he gets me to the next level, and that's where I want to go and make my millions. At Clemson, it's truly, I want to be here. I love being here. I love Coach Sweeney, and I want to be here as long as I can. So it truly is like almost like a light versus dark contrast, if you want to think of it that way.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, just speaking personally, I mean, growing up an LSU fan and being a Notre Dame fan by choice of going to school there, if I'd rather the Irish to build a program more like Clemson than like Alabama. I mean, granted, Alabama has had a lot of success and has won more titles, but culture matters. And can you find a football team with a more functional culture than Clemson? I mean, Alabama, it seems like, just like robotic, but Clemson, the players want to be there. And I mean, even the assistant coaches at Clemson, I think have been consistent for several years. And continuity matters when you're a high schooler and your future hangs in the balance of which school you go to. So,
but I mean, Mikey, how many times have we seen recruits commit to a school and then that school's coach gets fired or takes another job elsewhere, and then they withdraw their commitment and they want to go somewhere else?
I mean,
because they don't want to be recruited by this school and have their coach say, I want you to come play for me, and then when you actually get there, he's not there.
Mm-hmm.
It's so continuous at Clemson.
I mean, a great example of that would be LSU. I mean, LSU has, by national standards, not really struggled at all in the handoff from Les Miles to Ed Ogeron, but last year LSU lost to Troy. I mean, and that, they ended up losing to Notre Dame in the bowl game and all that, and had to get a transfer kicker, Cole Tracy, which he's been phenomenal, but a transfer quarterback, Joe Burrow, and hasn't had a all-star running back like they've had in Geis and Fournette and Jeremy Hill, and or the receivers like Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, and just LSU hasn't seemed to have as much superstar talent on either side of the ball they've used to. But now Coach O, now that it seems that he's there and he's stable, I think LSU currently has like the number 3 recruiting class in the country. I mean, I think they're a top 5 class as it stands at this moment.
No, yeah, they're a top 5 as of right now.
So, I mean, just look at that. I mean, just the one uncertainty of, even the several years of, is Les Miles going to get fired? Is Les Miles going to get fired? Is Les Miles going to get fired? And once he was fired, like, okay, well, Coach O's the interim, but who's going to be the head coach? Is LSU going to get Jimbo? Is LSU going to get Tom Herman? Are they going to keep Coach O? Is Nick Saban miraculously going to come back to Death Valley and not kick our ass for once? What we can all dream, can't we, General?
Dreams are what make life tolerable sometimes, right, Mike?
That it is, but anyways,
that's a paraphrase of a Rudy quote, by the way.
Exactly. Rudy is a fantastic movie, if anyone had any doubt to that. But basically, yeah, I mean, LSU is a clear example of how coaching uncertainty has affected recruiting, and maybe even with our own Notre Dame Fighting Irish, all the assistant coach turnover with the, Diaco leaving, and then the failed experiment that was Brian Van Gorder, and then Mike Elko getting sniped by Texas A&M. Honestly, if I had to give Brian Kelly advice, it would be keep your assistants, keep the 2 assistants you have right now because they've got something good going for them. Or your main 3 assistants, your strength coach, O and D coordinators. Also keep Tommy Rees for the memes. But I don't think Tommy Rees is... He might look for bigger and better things, but I want Tommy Rees to live his entire life as a Notre Dame quarterback coach. But honestly, that continuity at Clemson is what a lot of players cited as what they wanted. I mean, their defensive coordinator clearly knows what he's doing. I mean, he held Notre Dame to 3 points and Alabama to, 16? So,
yeah. When they were averaging 40 plus a game.
Yep. So that's the takeaway from the title game. So kind of taking another step back to the larger picture of college football, there's something very annoying that happens every year. Every year, the two teams that lose the semifinals are clearly illegitimate and should have never made the playoff, and the teams that win their New Year's Six bowl games clearly should have made it. Well, this year, we kind of didn't have that. If anyone ever thinks an undefeated Power 5 team, provided there are 4 or fewer undefeated Power 5 teams, the undefeated Power 5 team should make it in the playoff every year, no questions asked. I don't care if it's Vanderbilt. I don't care if it's Wake Forest. I don't care if it's Kansas. If you're a Power 5 team and you finish undefeated, you should be in the playoff. Unless there are more than 4, which I'm willing to make a bet right now. We will never have more than 3 undefeated teams in the Power 5 because that's what got us to expand to the playoffs. I mean, 03 when it was LSU and Oklahoma and then undefeated Southern Cal illegitimately claiming the title even though they played in whatever the hell bowl game they were in. That's, years like that are why we have the playoff. And honestly, as long as the playoff is big enough to encompass all undefeated Power 5 teams, I think it's good as it is. But people need to get out of here with this talk that an undefeated Notre Dame should not be allowed in the playoff, A, because of past performance, which is complete BS. No one would argue Ohio State should be left out of the playoff in the future because they got shut out 31-0 that one year. Am I wrong? No one is going to argue that a Florida State ACC undefeated champion should get left out the playoff because of how they performed in that first playoff. No one makes that argument. Stop making that argument about Notre Dame because of 2012 and this year. Clearly, Clemson had something good going. I mean, should we leave Alabama out the playoff because they got wrecked by Clemson? No. One, there's that. And two, the argument that Notre Dame gets an unfair advantage by not having to play a conference championship. Get the hell out of here with that. One, most of your Power 5 teams play an FCS team. They have fewer scholarships. They have worse players. They are what is colloquially known as a rent-a-win game. Notre Dame still plays rent-a-win. Notre Dame still plays rent-a-win type games, but they're against FBS, MAC, MAC or CUSA or whatever caliber teams. Our worst opponent is better than your worst opponent just by virtue of the players on the field. So get out of here. Get out of here with that. 2, Alabama won the title last year. They made the playoff. They did not play in their conference championship game. We have put in teams almost every year in the playoff. We have had a team who did not win a conference championship game or even play in one. Mm-hmm. So
Ohio State 2 years ago.
Ohio State 2 years ago. Alabama last year. So even though the playoff games have been blowouts, sometimes it's been the 4 blowing out the 1. Sometimes it's been the 3 blowing out the 2. We have not had a 1 seed win the playoff yet. So stop arguing that teams that lose in the first semifinal don't belong. And you know what? This year, there's even less of a legitimate claim. Because, General, who would you say were the 3? I would say the 3 claimants for a playoff spot that did not make it were Ohio State, Georgia, and UCF.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What happened in those 3 games, General? Please enlighten us.
Georgia got spanked by Texas.
Texas is back.
Might I say, back. UCF got off to a good start, but then ultimately LSU able to pull away somewhat. It got close near the end, but still a pretty decisive win for the Bayou Bengals. And then Ohio State, great start again, great first 3 quarters against Washington in the Rose Bowl, but they didn't let them get back into it in the final seconds. And if Washington recovers an onside kick with under a minute to go, who knows what happens? So it wasn't like yes. Georgia lost. Ohio State, Georgia and UCF lost, and yes, Ohio State won. But it wasn't a clear-cut win. Like, oh my God, this team was so much better than who they were playing the bowl game. Like, there's no doubt that they should have been playing tougher competition, blah, blah, blah. So the fact that we have these 3 programs all arguing that they should have been in, and then you have UCF get beat pretty handily by a 9-3 LSU.
A heavily injured and depleted LSU team.
where they had, like Mikey said, they had like trombone players and like, JV Mike the Tiger mascots coming out to suit up, put a helmet on. And then, Georgia laying an egg against Texas for the most part. And then Ohio State not pulling away against Washington. How on earth can you argue that, oh, yeah, those teams definitely deserve to be in over an undefeated Notre Dame and an undefeated Oklahoma?
Mm-hmm.
To me, it just doesn't add up.
And what's the most absurd part about all of this is most of the arguments that someone else should have made the playoff. It's not that they should have made it in over an Oklahoma team with a loss. It's that they should have made it in over an undefeated Notre Dame team.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have a functional brain? Did you even go to the school you were cheering for? Did you even go to any post-high school education? Did you even go to high school? Can you read? Clearly, because I saw it on Reddit and Twitter. But anyhow, the point. General's moving his phone. What's going on?
I gotta grab my phone charger. The battery's getting low.
If we lose the General again, that'd be hilarious. But the point we're trying to make is, look, it's not rocket science at all. Tim, you know how Georgia could have made the playoff? 2 ways. Don't get blown out by LSU and or don't lose to Alabama. Is that hard? No. Simple. Argument to the playoff? Mm-hmm. Good. Ohio State. How could have Ohio State made the playoff this year? Don't get blown out by Purdue. You can lose to 1 game to Purdue. But if you get slaughtered by Purdue, that's an elimination game. No one trusts you anymore. So, I mean, if you just lay an egg, like, look, if Ohio State had a close game and say, like, a miraculous gust of wind blew a field goal, they got recovered and returned, and now Tim's upside down. But, fixed. Basically, the point is, Ohio State could have made the playoff. It was in their own hands, and they blew it. So, once you no longer control your own destiny, you kind of can't really complain. And UCF, kind of needs to work as an institution. You know how UCF can make the playoff? Take that 2-1 against Florida. Take any game a Power 5 team will play against you.
If you're UCF, you need to employ the mantra of we will play anywhere. If you have like Florida, like let's throw on a team, let's like Texas A&M. If Texas A&M wants to play you at like 11 in Montreal, Canada, you go there and you play them because you want to prove that you can beat anybody, anywhere, at any time. So they need to stop with this whole nonsense of, oh, Florida's below us. Why are they demanding 2 in Gainesville and only 1 at our house? That doesn't make sense. It's not fair. It's like, well, until you can go on the road and beat Power 5 teams on bowl game situations, I really do people aren't going to take you seriously. Yeah, the win against Auburn last year was great. And yeah, they made it kind of close against LSU. But until you actually go out and beat someone in the regular season when everyone, for the most part, is at an even playing field, then no one's going to really trust you that much. And so I know they do have a big game coming up next year against Stanford, which will be huge for their strength of schedule. But to me, this whole Florida somehow below us, it's a bunch of nonsense. To me, if you're UCF, it's a great recruiting pitch. Because you think about it, most of your players were probably denied by the Gators. The Gators weren't interested in them. So you go to them and you say, hey, we know how Florida didn't give you an offer. Well, guess what? You come to UCF, you're going to go to the swamp twice, and you can prove them wrong and what they missed out on. It's an incredible recruiting tool. So I just don't understand why you're not going to take it. And it's ultimately going to help you in the long run of trying to get into the playoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so exactly. And there's a historical example of another team from Florida who's done this in the past. Over the holiday break, I was talking with a a graduate from both UCF Masters and got his PhD at Florida State. And he said, this is how Florida State built their program. Bobby Bowden literally would take any game, and I'm not exaggerating, any game a high-level school would offer them. Florida State would go to Texas. They'd go to LSU. They'd go to Notre Dame.
They came to Notre Dame in November. It was 20 degrees out,
They literally went to any high-level team that would take them. And some years, apparently, Florida State only had 3 or 4 home games. But you know what? They played. They were competitive in some of these games. They won several of these games. And eventually teams started respecting them. And now they're a shadow SEC program that plays in the ACC, and year out usually is competitive for it. This year was the first year Florida State had not made a bowl game in I think 30 or 40 years, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
So UCF, look at your big brothers, as much as you don't want to call them that, up north. Do what Florida State, if UCF is serious about becoming a national powerhouse on the field and becoming a title contender, that's what you have to do. My advice to UCF, leave the American, become independent, and schedule anyone that'll take you. If you have to do a 2-1 where you play Notre Dame in November and then they get to come to Orlando and just, chill in the normal stuff, honestly, if I'm UCF, I'll take any Power 5 game that's offered. Like you said, I don't care if I have to play Washington State on Pluto. I'm going to do it. Honestly, Mike Leach would probably agree to a football game on a pirate ship or something.
Mike Leach would figure it out. He would probably get a craft carrier and ammo.
Yeah, no, Mike Leach could probably buy some old aircraft carriers, put them together, lay down a turf field, and put up some grandstands. But literally, so the point we're trying to get at here is, if you're one of these 3 teams that thinks you should have made the playoff, one, the hill to die on is not you should have made it in over Notre Dame. 2, if you're Florida or Ohio State, you had a clear path and you blew it. And 3, if you're UCF, your administration needs to suck it up and be better, honestly. Mm-hmm. You know what's going to gain UCF a lot more respect than being... So, just from my perspective, if UCF plays a heavy road schedule where their 6 home games are okay, but are if they play more road games than home games, and a lot of those road games are against Power 5, and then they're still 12-0 or 10-2 or 11-1, that's going to earn me a lot more respect for UCF than if they get these fair scheduling deals that they claim they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Because Mikey, if they took that 2-for-1 with Florida, and can you imagine if they won both games in Gainesville? Can you imagine what that's going to do for their program?
That might skyrocket them up to whatever it takes to get in the playoff, being considered seriously as a group of 5 team to make the 4-team playoff, or becoming independent and kind of being a Notre Dame-esque program. I don't think it'll, obviously Notre Dame we do get a pass because of our history, but it might become a trend as TV deals become more and more convoluted, maybe to sacrifice TV money for a successful program and becoming independent's a thing. Or maybe the Big 12 will look at expansion again, or who knows what the future holds. But you've got to do what you can right now to schedule as good of a schedule as you can. And honestly, it's not about pride. Respect is earned, it's not given. You got to earn respect, and the best way to earn respect for UCF would have been to take that very generous from Florida, but in their minds, unfair scheduling deal, and in my hopeful opinion, or in my dream, beat Florida all 3 games, including 2 in a very quiet and sad swamp. So yeah, and the claimants to the playoff are all illegitimate. I think we got the right 4, regardless. I said this in our first video, I think, before bowl season, regardless of outcome, the committee got the right 4 teams. And if the season were played over again, or if you have a next year season and you just put any team's name on the 4 records that were chosen, I think we get the same 4 teams.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Mikey. And the thing that that really, I guess, last point here, the thing that really ground my gears about the whole Georgia thing was how we were just talking about it before we came on air. How they just seem to completely forget the fact that in Baton Rouge against LSU. It's like okay, wonderful. You played Alabama tight, but did you win? No. Okay. What was your other loss? Oh, we went on the road and got spanked by a 9-3 LSU team. Well, that doesn't look too good. So like to me,
LSU's
the
a good
fact that
team,
they
but that loss is inexcusable if you want to make the
yeah,
college football playoff.
yeah, if you want to make the college football playoff, you can't lose to anybody by 20. Okay?
Hmm.
And so like the fact that they just kind of like, like glossed over that just kind of like angered me. So to that I just, gotta give, the LSU, go Tigers
The
and
Chinese bandit
do
bow.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just going to end on this. I've disagreed. I may have had opinions that have gone against this in the past, but this is how it is. If you're an undefeated Power 5 team, you make the playoff. If you get 2 losses, you're eliminated. You can only make the playoff as a Power 5 team if you are undefeated or have 1 loss. That's it. Once you lose your second game, you're out of there. No chance to make
And
it.
that one loss better be good because we've seen how that screwed over Ohio 2 years in a row now.
Mhm.
Blown out by a mediocre Iowa team, blown out by a mediocre Purdue team, and that's it. That's what cost them 2 years in a row.
Mhm.
So you can only afford one loss, and it better be a good one.
And I mean, if you look back historically, the last 2-loss team to even make a playoff or BCS thing and win was LSU over 10 years ago in 2007. And I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember, 2007 might have been the weirdest year of college football ever. So,
I mean, we had like what was it like? We had like South Florida, Boston College with Matt Ryan. We're like number 2. I think wasn't it like Kansas, Missouri, a top 5 matchup that year?
I think Kansas made like the Sugar Bowl or something like that. Kansas may have made a BCS
They
bowl.
won the Orange. They
Won
won
the
the
Orange
Orange
Bowl?
Bowl that year.
Kansas made a BCS bowl and won it. So 07 was a strange year, unless, granted, there could be chaotic years where everyone has 1 or 2 losses, and maybe you have to have 2-loss teams. But provided there are enough of them, you are only making the playoff if you have none, if you have 0 or 1 loss. And that 1 loss, like you said, better be to a highly ranked team very close. So I think this kind of rolls into the same argument. Every year, all the time, we're always talking about we need to expand the playoff. After this year's postseason, General Zadanik is the generalissimo of college football. Do you keep the playoff at 4 or do you expand it to 8?
I wish.
Or do you freeze? I think he froze. But when he comes back, we'll ask him again.
You know,
General? What?
I'm here.
Okay, you're back. Do you keep it at 4 or do you expand to 8?
I've gone back and forth on this. The idea of expanding to 8 is intriguing, especially if we throw in the factor of on-campus games for the quarterfinals. Because, I know we were laying out, I think this year it would have been, some of the matchups would have been, we would have had UCF at Alabama, so they would have gotten their chance, theoretically. We would have had Michigan at Clemson. We would have had we would have had Ohio State at Notre Dame, and we would have had Oklahoma at Georgia. And so, just imagining, what an Ohio State Notre Dame game in South Bend in the quarterfinals would look like, if that doesn't get you excited as a college football fan, I don't know what does. So, I mean, really, really tempting in and of itself. But then, like you said, Mikey, when you kind of sit back and look at the bigger picture, and you're like this year, we clearly had Clemson, Alabama, and then pretty much everybody else. So we didn't need, I guess, like after the results, we didn't need 8 teams to determine who was the best because we pretty much knew. So, and like you were saying, if you're not good enough to get into the top 4, can you really make a claim as the best team in college football? Because otherwise, if we do expand to 8, then we would have we would have teams out there like who finished like like we would have like a team like Washington.
Exactly. If you expand to 8, you're gonna have auto bids. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I say keep it at 4 for several reasons. One, the auto bids are a horrible idea. So picture this: if we had the auto bids after the conference championship games, what if we had Pittsburgh and Northwestern and Washington and Texas as 4 of the teams in the playoff? They wouldn't deserve to be there. I mean, if you just look at the regular season, the non-conference schedule would no longer matter, and you'd honestly have more bad games, even with the 4-team playoff. We have had the 4-team playoff for 5 years, so you've had 10 semifinal games. You know how many of those games were close, competitive, and fun to watch? 2. Last year's Rose Bowl and the first year of the Sugar Bowl. Those are the only 2. We've had shutouts. We've had blowouts. We've just had a lot of non-competitive football games. Why? Because there are some teams like Alabama and Clemson and, that are just head and shoulders above everyone else. Some years you have teams that are competitive. Like you have Oklahoma. Last year was very competitive with Georgia. Or in the first year, you had Ohio State, which was clearly as competitive as Alabama. I mean, situations like that. And yeah, I also think 4 is a good number because if you look at it, even if we had kept the BCS, we would have excluded the champion several years. Out of the 5 years, the 1 seed has never won the playoff yet. Out of the 5 years, every time it's been a 2, a 3, even a 4. The 4 seed has won twice now, I think, with Ohio State in the first year and with Alabama last year. So, not that seeding matters all that much, but honestly, I think after this year, if you look at how bad the semifinals had been and how honestly the bowl season games overall weren't as good, do you really want to expand the playoff and hype up all these quarterfinal games when Alabama would have killed UCF and then their next round game, and you may have just gotten the same thing at the end after a lot more blowouts and maybe some competitive games that ended up not mattering? Because say we had Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Notre Dame wins a close, exciting game against Ohio State and then goes and lays an egg against Clemson like they did in the Cotton Bowl. Would that be better? I don't think so. And the people who want to expand kind of compare to college basketball or college baseball or other sports. And, the reason why the 64-team tournament format works for those sports is because it's a lot easier to play games in quick succession in those sports. And also, that's kind of a postseason reward for these lower-level teams. Making the big dance in March Madness, making a regional in college baseball is kind of a reward for a good season for these lower-level teams. Guess what? In college football, we have rewards for these lower-level teams to congratulate them on a good season. It's called a bowl game. We already cover that side of things. And, people want to talk about, overall, I don't think the 4-team playoff ever leaves out a legitimate title contender. I mean, maybe the first year when Baylor and TCU were co-champs and left out. Maybe one of them could have won it, but I don't think leaving out a contender here and there is, if you leave out a contender here and there, well, like we said this year, maybe Georgia was good enough to win the title. If you're Georgia, you should then don't lose to LSU and don't lose to Alabama in the SEC title game. So we have the reward for the lower level teams. Not that that's what the playoff expansion has ever been about. We pretty much I feel like we get a legitimate champion every year. We never leave out an undefeated Power 5 team because as far as I can remember, we've never had more than 3 undefeated Power 5 teams at the end of the year. And honestly, they're just so. I mean, the Clemson, Alabama currently are in such a higher level than everyone else. I mean, I just think we'd be, prolonging the inevitable by switching to an 18 playoff. So right now, Kaiser Misho votes no on the expansion. Generalissimo Zdanek, yes or no?
Judging, if you had asked me this question back in early mid-December, I probably would have said it. I would have said expand it. But after seeing the playoff games this year, I think now I'm leaning more towards let's just keep it the way it is for right now.
I definitely agree with you. So we've talked about college football on the field enough. I feel like we've covered everything. We've kind of gotten to the off the field deals. Let's continue with a few more off the field topics to wrap up the show. So one of the big talks right now is about Kyler Murray, the Heisman winner, whether he is currently a first round draft pick of the Oakland A's in Major League Baseball. But he, from what the A's office is telling reporters in the Bay Area and what the general buzz is that Kyler Murray will declare for the NFL draft. If you are Kyler Murray, do you go to Major League Baseball or NFL or some combination of both, and why?
So, I mean, this is such a crazy situation because we really haven't had too many high-profile athletes like Kyler Murray have this tough decision where he could be a superstar in either sport. I mean, he was the 9th overall pick in the Major League Baseball draft this year by the Oakland A's. And so if you're top, I mean, for those who are unaware, the MLB draft is like 60 rounds. Like, it's crazy how long it is. So if you're one of the first 10 players taken, that means that teams think very highly of you.
Examples of some top 10.
And obviously, we all know what Kyler Murray can do on the field. Heisman Trophy winner this. Mikey, you still there?
Your audio cut out for a little bit, but I mean, just to add a quick aside to that, a recent top 10 draft pick that several of you have probably heard of, Alex Bregman, was the number 2 pick a few years back. So if you're a top 10 pick, I mean, you're probably gonna be playing, and the teams think very highly of you, and there's a solid chance. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's kind of like in the NFL, or it's even more so than in the NFL. Being in the first round is great, but not nearly as much of a guarantee as being as high as 9. So.
Mm-hmm. And so I think Kyler Murray definitely he definitely can have a bright future in either sport, but I think you look at him. So obviously, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. And this is a relatively weak quarterback class. Whereas next year figures to be stronger, especially if you have guys like Tua coming out. So, most sought after quarterbacks in this year's draft class, and especially there are a good amount of NFL teams that are looking for a quarterback. You think about the Jaguars, you think about the Broncos, you think about the Giants, depending on what they want to do with Eli Manning. So there are teams out there in the quarterback market right now. So I think from reports I've heard is that if Kyler Murray goes to the NFL draft, he will go in the first round. So that's something to definitely consider. Whereas in baseball, he's an outfielder. And outfielders are a bit more expendable than others.
Than quarterbacks in the NFL for sure.
Yeah. So I know people have been comparing this to the Jeff Samardzija starter game. Also was a pitcher on the baseball team. Ultimately decided to go play baseball. And with his case was that Samardzija was a pitcher who had a crazy fastball. And in this day and age in Major League Baseball, pitchers are, especially those who can throw upper 90s consistently, are man. Whereas outfielders, like we said, they're very expendable. If Joe Schmo doesn't work out in the outfield, you can easily find some other dude in your farm system, probably, or make a trade at the trade deadline, draft a guy next year, whatever the case may be. There are a lot of outfielders out there, whereas pitchers, especially starting good, hard throwing starting pitchers, are much they're much than outfielders are. So that's the mountain that Kyler Murray would have to climb in baseball. And also, you think about it, he's not going to be playing for the Oakland A's right away. He's going to have to work his way up through the farm systems, making not too great of money, having to ride buses from city to city, and who knows what that emotional toll is like. So yes, I think he definitely has the potential to eventually get to the Oakland Athletics and be a star player for them. But when you compare worth as an outfielder in baseball compared to a first-round quarterback in the NFL, it definitely seems football may be the best option. Where he can also get a guaranteed 4-year contract right off the bat. And like I said, if he goes to a team like the Jaguars, he's going to be starting right away and getting substantial playing time.
No, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. So Jeff Samardzija has usually been my argument for playing baseball over football. But like you said, Jeff Samardzija was a receiver in football and a pitcher in baseball. Kyler Murray is a quarterback in football and an outfielder in baseball. So if you just go by which position is more important, a pitcher is more important than a wide receiver, but a quarterback is way more important than an outfielder. So based on that alone, I feel like Kyler Murray could go in the first round. And honestly, if he just makes a first-round rookie contract, I think that'll be worth more money than an MLB contract. On top of that, if you look at Tim freaking Tebow, who hasn't played baseball since high school, is able to go from his, unfortunately ended early NFL career. Thank you, Peyton Manning and the Broncos Super Bowl for that. But he probably would have been, most people think he probably wouldn't have lasted much longer in the NFL, regardless of the Peyton Manning situation. But Tebow has a good chance to play in the major leagues this year after, like we said, he never played college baseball. Kyler Murray plays college baseball. So if you're Kyler Murray, you can definitely feasibly, let's just say Kyler Murray is a complete flop in the NFL and is trying to think of a bust quarterback, but RG3 level bust. Poor RG3. But, something along those lines. Let's say he's like that. Then what happens is, you serve out your 4-year rookie contract and you go back to baseball. Or if you're decent, they pick up your 5th-year option and you can sign another contract in the NFL. And let's say you have a great NFL career, great job. Let's say your NFL career, doesn't go anywhere. You can still go to baseball and you can still do probably pretty well. And all this talk is ignoring the fact that I don't know if it's been talked about. I don't know how feasible it is. There's always a possibility Kyler Murray could Bo Jackson it and do both. So if I had to have my pick, I'd want him to Bo Jackson. Now, if I were him, I would want to Bo Jackson 1. 2, I'd go to the NFL and try it. And then the third and probably the least prudent and also the least, definitely the least lucrative option would be just go straight to baseball. So I think you have to test out the draft. And look, this is what I tell the NFL coaches and GMs and all the agents in the NFL. Look, I have this great opportunity with baseball. If you want me, you draft me in the first round, and if I'm not drafted in the first round, I'm pulling my name out the draft. That's why I tell these NFL teams, look, if you want me, I will play for you. I will play for only you if you want me to. I'll play for, I'd like to do both, but I'll play for only you if you want me to. and you better draft me in the first round, or I'm coming off the board, and you'll never see Kyler Murray play another snap of high level football.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm usually a pro baseball guy. I love baseball. It's my favorite sport. I played it. I feel like just from the money point of view and the risk reward side of things, especially if you're going to be the quarterback drafted in the first round, go NFL. You can always come back to baseball later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot harder to do it vice versa. To go to baseball and then say, "Oh, I want to go do football." It's next to impossible.
You can't do it. I mean, but yeah, you got to go I would love to see him go the Bo Jackson, some others like.
I would too, because I mean, I never saw Bo Jackson,
or
do it back in the day.
Deion Sanders did it too, I think.
Deion Sanders did it. I was too young when that was when he was in his prime. So yeah, I guess from the pure fan entertainment perspective, I'd love to see Kyler try to do both. But if he has to do one for now, I think football is probably the best route. And like you said, Mikey, if for whatever reason he doesn't go in the first round, then he'd be like, you know what, screw this. I'm pulling my name. I'm just going to go do baseball because I'm not going to mess around with, a third round, salary.
Because at that point, the NFL would not be paying you more money. I mean, so, and honestly.
And they might not trust you either.
Exactly. And one thing I want to add to this just before we move on to our next and hilarious topic. If you're Major League Baseball, I think the best thing for baseball as a sport and as a league would be for him to Bo Jackson it. Because could you imagine, picture this. Picture if Kyler Murray gets drafted by the Giants, since you threw that name out there. And let's say Kyler Murray made a deep playoff run, even won the Super Bowl with the Giants, and then went straight into spring training for the Oakland A's. Could you imagine the buzz around the Oakland A's and Major League Baseball if that happened? Granted, if Kyler Murray's to the point where he's winning Super Bowls, I don't think he might go back to baseball. But let's just say, he had a good season or whatever, or, maybe won offensive player of the year, rookie, offensive MVP, Pro Bowl, something good. If he had a great NFL season, got a lot of buzz, and then went on to baseball, could you imagine how many more eyeballs that would bring to Major League Baseball?
The A's might actually sell out the Oakland Coliseum.
I think we can end it out there. Staying in the state of California, Cliff Kingsbury recently was announced as USC's new offensive coordinator. He has coached a grand total of 0 games, scored a grand total of 0 points, achieved 0 yards, 0 passing, 0 rushing, has done absolutely nothing other than take another job at the Arizona Cardinals. Honestly, the best job Cliff Kingsbury, in my opinion, ever made as Southern Cal offensive coordinator was leaving Southern Cal. General A through F, or A plus through F, how would you grade Cliff Kingsbury's career as the Southern Cal offensive coordinator? Because I give him a resounding A plus.
A plus plus.
Oh, I mean, just great. He took a job with the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of NFL news going on right now, including the playoffs. Hope my Saints can, bring back number 2. But we're going to hold off on our NFL analysis for the sake of time in this video and because, we could preview, but I hate to prove all you wrong.
R.I.P. to my Bears.
Rip the Bears, but at least you still rep the Bears. Bears had a good season that came
Looking as devastating as that loss was, Mikey, it was a hell of a fun season. The most fun I've had watching the Bears in a long time. The city of Chicago was completely caught up in Bears fever. Bears jerseys, jack all over the place. So to finally see the city caught up in Bears fever again, that was something special, and I think we got something going for it at least.
Absolutely. I mean, nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, I feel bad for your kicker, but let's move on from the NFL and let's end this episode of Sports Ramblings with a fan question. If you would like to be the fan question of the Sports Rambling thing, we're going to start off with just one because we only have just one. Feel free to tag Tim on Twitter. I don't check Twitter anymore because I deleted it off my phone, and it's actually quite nice not to have it. So tag Tim. This is kind of a useless graphic down below. Still follow my YouTube channel or Snapchat me or something. I still check, do a lot of gaming YouTube stuff. But our first fan question is from superfan Ryan, Project Leader Ryan, Baby Cheeks to Chico, Brian DeChico.
Baby Cheeks.
So, General, who will step up as the wide receiver for Notre Dame following departure of Miles Boykin?
It's probably going to be Chase Claypool because he's the only starting skill position player outside of Ian Book coming back next year on offense for the Irish, because Miles Boykin is graduating, Chris Fink graduating, Alize Mack, Dexter Williams graduating. So 4 stud skill position players right there off the board for Notre Dame next year. And Chase Claypool was the only junior of the bunch. And obviously, he had some phenomenal games this year. He's really improved in his last couple seasons in South Bend. I would think he's going to be the number 1 guy going into next season. Michael Young is another guy to keep your eye on. I think he's a junior next year. So he's definitely another guy to keep an eye on. He's usually more of a deep threat guy. He's much more of a speedster to really get down the field quickly. So I know he was very popular on deep routes. He actually caught, I believe it was the game tying touchdown in the Citrus Bowl last year against LSU. And I know he had a big touchdown grab against Northwestern this year. So to me, that's probably going to be the big wide receiver duo next year is Claypool and Michael Young out wide. And then after that, we're starting to get down the depth chart because it actually Chip Long can keep the momentum rolling into next year. And at least we got Ian Book back at quarterback for another year.
Absolutely, and hopefully the freshman wide receivers that we haven't heard of yet, the incoming class, are more reliable than Tim's internet connection. That's an episode of Sports Ramblings. I think that's a great note to end it on. The simple answer is Chase Claypool, but going more deep, the freshmen need to step up, the underclassmen need to step up. Hopefully Brian Kelly's bringing in good recruits, and Chip Long can keep putting together a good offense. What I would like to see Notre Dame football going forward, I want to see a running back that's a threat in the passing game. Kind of like what the Saints have put together with Darren Sproles back in the day, and now with Alvin Kamara. Kind of what LSU did this a decent amount with Darius Geist. Not so much Leonard Fournette, not so much this year. But if Notre Dame, Claypool is going to be the number 1 guy. But honestly, what Notre Dame would be better off doing, not better off doing, but would definitely benefit from spreading the ball around. We always have great tight ends. We're going to have a great number 2. Like we said, hopefully the new recruits step up. But if we can start involving a running back out the passing game, we all know on NCAA 14 angle routes work beautifully. I love my screens. But yeah, if you just mimic kind of what the Saints do with Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara in the college game, especially at an offense like Notre Dame, I feel like we could get a lot of success there. Thank you, Ryan, for asking that question. Thank you all for watching Sports Ramblings. If you want to ask us questions again, social media for Tim, Snapchatting us or whatever. Also, there is an email down in the description, sportsramblingshow@gmail.com. I do get those on my phone. We never get any emails because none of y'all subscribe. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, comment, let us know what you think, and be sure to tune in for the next episode of Sports Ramblings sometime shortly after the hopefully Saints Super Bowl victory. General, it's been a pleasure. Thanks everyone so much for watching. And until the next one, it's Mikie and Tim signing out. See you, nerds.